Welcome to episode 9. In this episode we're coming back to the bow to continue work on the anchor system. So what we need to do now with the anchor system is get the anchor loaded into it, try it for size. I have already done this off camera, and the way the anchor works is a Talamex Populair anchor, and the way it works, it sort of flaps from one side to the other, but that's causing some conflict with the front. So we need to modify this roller so there's some kind of guides built into it to guide the anchor into a position which doesn't conflict the bow and also enables it for storage. So we're going to do that. We're going to clean the roller because there's lots of grindings that have got on it and rusted and caused contamination there. It's just a bit untidy, so we're going to give that a good tea cutting, clean that off. Probably going to spray the anchor in like a high zinc paint, because it's just a bit dull and grey. There's nothing wrong with the galvanised on it, but it's not very pretty, and it might not be something that gets used like ever. And if it is used, it's probably going to be quite infrequent, and we can just touch it up again. So we'll give that a spray, just tidy that up, and I'm sure we'll find a few other things to do up here. So let's make a start. This is a big heavy anchor, it's 25 kilos. Right, let's put the chain lock on to secure that. I think we just leave that where it is for a moment. Okay. So I just wanted to show you how these things sort of look now the chain is in. So if you remember, we put this on some pieces of steel to measure the distance from the centre of the chain above the steel, which is how we came up with the height of this. We wanted this, the inside surface of this, to be level with the bottom of the chain. So I think we achieved that. And the anchor looks, pretty nice in that guide. It's sort of sitting nice and flat on the bottom. Not quite sitting on the bottom. It's like, 5mm off of it, sitting up there on the roller, quite nicely, square. The swivel just finishes just before the chain lock. Chain lock's engaged properly, and then it just drops down into the gypsy there. So I'm really happy with how that's come together. As you can see though, what I'm talking about, it being a bit grey and dull, it's not a very pretty anchor. So we'll do something about that. But this is a problem, how these come up. You know, they obviously smash into the deck here, which is going to ruin any paint. So we can't have this. We need to find some permanent solution here to stop those sitting there. And I'm thinking, rather than mess about trying to weld something to the deck, which will just make it more difficult to clean the deck, I'm thinking of welding some sort of guide vanes, maybe something like this, onto the roller. So as long as we can get these up onto the guide vane, as the anchor comes up, it will then come up the vane and it will sit, you know, in that position. It will sit up off of the deck. So we need to experiment a bit with this, but I think in doing this we found out what the L-shaped pieces of steel that were welded to the deck here were. Look, they're exactly where these blades of the anchor are. I think they were just welded up here like this to sit that in, to sit that blade in, and then the anchor was just tied to that Samson post. There was no windlass or anything. The anchor was just tied to a rotten old rope. But that's what they were, I think. They were positioners for the anchor, so somebody else had to contend with this problem before, but we're going to sort it out properly by welding some stainless vanes onto this roller. We also need to get this roller off and shape it at the front and the bottom to clear that and bolt it down properly. So the problem that we've got up here with the anchor is that the anchor is coming up tilted in this position, which then when it comes up any further it conflicts with the bow underneath here. I don't think there's any easy way of guiding these away from the front of the boat without building some great big structure underneath, which I don't really want to do, considering this anchor may never be used or very seldom. So I think what we'll do, we'll build some sort of plates on the side of this bow roller that completely protect this part of the deck, and then once the anchor reaches this point, it will sort of guide them away from the deck and just give them something to sit on when it's in its upper position. So it's going to be a bit of experimentation, but let's see what we can come up with. So what I've decided to do here, I don't know if you can see these little dotted lines down in here. I'm just going to make one 50 centimetre wide by about 15 centimetres strip of 6mm 316 stainless steel, cut a slot in it which will go round this roller, and it will slot on from underneath, and we'll weld it to this roller, and that will clear the bow by 1 inch so I can get a sponge around there, and it will go down below this by about 5 or 6 centimetres to protect this pipe going around the outside. And then, yeah, when I retrieve the anchor, I'll just go down, I'll lift this up, which will get it onto that plate, and then it will slide up the plate, and then when it reaches its top position, the top of this line here is about the top of the anchor blades. It will just sit on top of that plate at that point. It will just sit on there and overhang, but that will stop it. That will stop it from conflicting the deck. So that's my best guess at a solution for this at the moment. So I'm just going to go and find some steel, and then we'll get cutting. Right, so I've brought everything down here onto the bench, anchor, so we can respray that, the roller, and then this nice sheet of 6mm 316 stainless, second hand. That matches up quite nicely to this. So we're going to make this, you can see my scribblings on here. This is where the slot's going to be cut out for this blade to fit under here. So this blade's just going to come out, like this, to guide the anchor up onto the top, and then just support the blade of the anchor once it's up there in its sort of seated position. So I didn't bother filming that because it was probably the most boring 30 minutes of my life. I have cut off of the front there, these pieces, so we reshaped that. So we reshaped that to follow the profile of the wheel. Let's get the wheel. The wheel's just inside there. Sits just inside there, about 1 millimetre inside there. So that's how it looks. This is original, it did poke out the bottom. So that looks pretty neat now. Shaped that, and then I shaped this. Just took this off just to clear the boat. There's not much space, maybe 1/2 inch just to sort of get a sponge in under there to clean the boat, but that's enough. At least it's not conflicting, and I've smoothed all those around and put a nice little chamfer on the edge, so there's no sharp edges there. That's pretty nice. Now what we need to do is cut this sort of blade guide and positioning wise, I've drawn a couple of lines on there which will mark where the blade goes, because of course if it's slotting on, the blade can't conflict with that wheel. So whilst that wheel was bolted in, I've drawn that on. That's the furthest forward position I can get away with, which gives us about 25mm in front of the bow to be able to just get in and clean. So that should be fine. We just mark this up and cut the sheet. And we'll just mark this up as well. So this is the blade, so it's 50cm wide. We've got the shiny surface facing outwards, and the sort of guillotined edge at the bottom, so that you know, those are the what people will see from the front. And then we'll cut the top, and we'll have the matte edge on the back. So we just need to cut this slot in here now, which will slot up onto the roller. Okay, so this is what we've made. Haven't welded this yet, but there's the plate cut with a slot to fit around there. You might just about be able to see the sort of line here. That's where the blades of the anchor will sit once they come up over this plate, and then the anchor sits down flat in the roller. So they'll just sort of, you know, come down but not conflict with the deck. And then also cut out this little semicircle there so that the chain and the sort of spine of the anchor don't conflict with that plate as it comes up. Yeah, I think that's pretty nice. We need to stainless weld this. I've got some 316 wire, but it means rethreading the welder up, because it's got the mild steel wire in it at the moment. Not ready to do that today, but yeah, tomorrow I might get that out, and it's done. Be a great job finished. Happy with that. Whilst we're on this job, I'm just going to give this anchor a coat of this aluminium zinc spray. It's not particularly made for anchors or anything, but I know it's ridiculously corrosion resistant, and it dries really hard. So it dries like a 2K product. It's solid, so that'll provide enough protection for this sitting on the front for a little while longer before we get to use it. So I'm just going to wire brush this off, and then give it its first coat of that paint. And that paint we can put on real thick. If I wanted to put it on sort of high wear areas, I can build it up and up and up, and it just gets thicker and thicker. Very high build product. I think this anchor's actually been painted with something before. There's some evidence of some silver paint down here that's coming away as I'm brushing. Pretty rough. I don't know what that is. Very hard. Might be the original galvanised coat. I don't really want to grind it off. We'll just leave that. Right, so we've threaded the 316 stainless wire into the gun. I've put the old gun back on because it's got a slightly narrower nozzle there, and that'll make it easier to get into this weld. I've brought this in here. I've just positioned it. I'm just going to tack weld this, and then we're going to offer it up to the deck, bolt it down, put the anchor in it, and see how it works basically before I do the final weld. So I'm just going to put a couple of tacks on the back of this. I got myself a nice new mask. I was a bit worried about the old one. Well, the optical clarity was a bit rubbish, and it was an old Chinese one. It was a bit broken, so I thought I'd treat myself to this new one. So I've got this Kempe mask. Let's see how we get on with this. That's heavy. That looks pretty good to me. Double check it. Right. Let's go and see if it fits. Right. Well, the roll is nice and smooth. We've managed to avoid conflicting with that. Got high hopes for this. Right. Okay. Yep. That's done exactly what I hoped it would do. So it guides the blades up once I offer them up onto it, and then they come up over the top and they just sit like that. And so that the tips of the blades don't conflict with the deck, they're just held off of it. Quite happy with that. I don't really know if we can sort of make that any better, really. I think that's good enough. I might put, in fact I will put some kind of rubber, maybe a piece of hose or some kind of rubber thing across the top so it doesn't scratch all the paint off the anchor. That'll work quite nicely. Apart from that, I think that's good to weld proper. Let's get on with that and then we can put this all back together. Okay, I gave this a little polish whilst we were down there. Now I need to just touch up the paint on the bag where we've scuffed it. forgot to put the roller in. Okay, got it all back together now. Stage chain, chain lock, swivel, and the anchor, which we've painted in that high build zinc paint. And the guide underneath it. And that sits really rather nicely on that. Right, happy with that. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.